Hey guys, today we're going to do a quick video to review area and surface area of every different type of shape. So let's get started just with basic squares or rectangles. Your area formula is base times height or length times width, and that is for squares and rectangles. So remember that area is base times height or length times width. And remember to always look for your 90-degree angle marker, which is here in red. If you see that little right angle marker or 90-degree angle marker, that is your best friend. That tells you what two lines are going to be your base and your height. So if you see that guy, then say, hey, what is he touching? He's touching the line on the bottom, and he's touching the line on the top right here. So you would multiply those two lines because your best friend told you to. So always look for your 90-degree angle marker or your best friend. Remember, this is your formula just for squares or rectangles only. Also, another rule is that your base and your height have to be 90-degree angle or perpendicular to each other. So they have to be touching and they have to be perpendicular, not parallel. Parallel is like this, and that is incorrect. They can't be that way. They have to be perpendicular to each other. All right, let's move along to triangles. The rule for triangles is that your area is base times height and divided by 2. So if you've got a triangle here, you've got to find your base and your height, and then you've got to divide that by 2 for triangles. So let's pretend like our base is 6, and our height is going to be from the very bottom to the top. So all the way up here, pretend like that's our little 90-degree angle marker. This would be our height, and our height is 3. So base times height for this triangle would be 6 times 3, which is 18. But don't forget it's a triangle, so we have to divide by 2. And if we divide 18 by 2, then that gives us an area of 9 for the triangle, because you have to divide your base and your height by 2 if you have a triangle. Remember a rule that you can never use slanted lines. This would be a slanted line here. This would be a slanted line here. And if they give you a number that is attached to those slanted lines and tell you to find your area, remember that Ms. Blackwell said we don't use slanted lines because your base and your height have to be perpendicular to each other. So that's the rule for triangles, area for triangles. All right, let's talk about surface area. Surface area is when you have a 3D shape. 3D shape means you can kind of see through it. You see all the different parts of it. And for surface area, you've got rules. So let's look at our rules for surface area. For surface area, you are going to, trying to get my little board straight for you, you are going to first count your faces. Now, faces are the flat outside edges of a 3D shape that you can color or you can touch. So if you have a box, you know, all of those flat outer edges are called faces. Boxes are cubes. Cubes always have 6 faces. So count how many faces that you have first. For each face that you count, you have to find the area. So number 1, count your faces and write down how many you have. Number 2, find the area of each face. Now, if one of the faces is a square or a rectangle, you're going to do base times height. If your face is a triangle, on that triangle, you have to do base times height and divide the triangle by 2. All right, lastly, when you have all of the areas for your faces, add them all together. So you count your faces, see how many there are first, so you don't forget any. Find the area of each face, look for your base and your height, multiply, and then add those all together. And that's how you find your surface area. That's counting all your faces and adding them all up. All right, let's look and see if we can do an example together. All right, let's look at these 2 examples. This on the left is called a polygon. A polygon is neither just a simple triangle or a simple square. It is something that you have to break into a triangle and a square before you can find the area of it. Now, we wouldn't find surface area of this because this is not a 3D shape. This on the right is a 3D shape, so we would find surface area here. but this on the left is just a polygon. When you have a polygon, you have to decompose it to make squares and triangles. We would decompose it by breaking it up to have an easy triangle and a rectangle here by cutting it across right there. Now, if you decompose it or break it in half, you can see you have a rectangle at the bottom and a triangle at the top. And you know how to find area of those because we've already talked about it, right? For your squares or rectangles, it's simply base times height. Now, we see that 6 would be the base of our rectangle, but what would be the height? Is 12 the height of that rectangle? It is not. 12 is the height of the entire polygon, and our rectangle stops right there, doesn't it? The rectangle stops there. So the height of this rectangle is 8. So your base and height here, look at those. Those are a nice perpendicular to each other, is 6 times 8. 6 times 8 is 48, so that is the area for just the rectangle. Now, come up and look at the triangle. The triangle doesn't have any numbers on it, so you've got to figure those out. What would your base be for that triangle? The base for the triangle doesn't have a number there, does it? So you've got to look around. When you look around, you need to see if there's any lines that are parallel, because if two lines are parallel to each other, then they're the same exact distance. So do you see two lines that are parallel? Remember, parallel means this. I see two red lines that are parallel. You've got a 6 here, and this line is parallel to that one. So that means this one is 6 also, because those are the exact same. So we know our base for our triangle is 6. Now, what about the height of the triangle? Does it give you a height for just the triangle? No. It gives you the height of the whole entire polygon, though. If the whole entire polygon from here to here, there to there, if that whole thing is 12, and we know that this line is parallel to this line, that tells us that this is 8 over here, because that one is 8. And remember, if they're parallel, they should equal the same. So if this one is 8, then what do you think is left over for the height of the triangle? It would have to be 4, because 8 plus 4 more would give us our total 12. So the height of the triangle is 4. Now, how do you find area of a triangle? You do base times height divided by 2. 6 times 4 is 24. 24 divided by 2 is 12. So your area for the triangle is 12. Now, what do we do with those two areas? 48 and 12. We add them. When you add the two areas together, you get a total of 60. So your area for that polygon is 60. Good job. All right, the surface area. Surface area. Remember the rules for surface area? Can you remember those? What are they? Well, I've got it written down. Surface area is count the faces, find the area of each face, and then add them all together. So let's do that. Let's see how many faces that you think we have here. So this looks like a right rectangular prism. I'm saying that because prisms have two bases. We've got a triangle at the top, and you can see a triangle that matches it at the bottom that it's sitting on. If you look at all the walls, which are like the faces of this, you've got 1 triangle at the top, 2 triangle at the bottom, a left rectangle here, a right rectangle there, and then don't forget that back. Remember, there's going to be a back side of this 3D shape right there on the back. So how many faces did we count? 1 triangle, 2 triangles, 3, 4, the back makes 5. So that means you need to count 5 faces. So I would come to the bottom and say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That way, every time you find an area of each face, you can write it down. So let's look at the triangles first. What did I tell you about the little 90-degree angle marker, right angle marker? What is that? It's your best friend, right? And the best friend tells you what 2 numbers to multiply. Well, is that best friend touching that 29 up there? No, it's not. What is it touching? It's touching this line, and it's touching this line. Now, since it's touching those 2 lines right here, those 2 lines, that means that those are your base and your height. But does it have numbers there? There aren't any numbers there, right? So look at your parallel lines. This line right here is parallel to this line, so this has to be 21. This line is parallel to this line, so this has to be 20. 21 times 20 gives us 420 if you did that. 420, is that going to be your area? Think about it. Why not? Why is that not your area? Because this is a triangle, and triangles get divided by 2. 420 divided by 2 is 210. So there's our first area. Now, on rectangular or triangular prisms, you've got 2 triangular bases, right? So if this one has an area of 210, then what do you think the bottom has to have an area of? Well, I think that these would have to be the exact same dimensions, because if they weren't, this would be a really wonky 3D shape. So if this triangle at the top is 210, this one also has to be 210. So write that one down for the second base. Third face, which one do you want to do? Let's do, I usually use different colors. Let's do this. Let's do the back first. I already did that in black. Let's do the back. So the black is the very back. And let's see what our base and height are. Now, what do you know about your base and height? They have to be perpendicular. So perpendicular means this or this, right? Do you see 2 numbers on that back side that are perpendicular to each other? I do. You've got 29 and 10. 29 and 10 both represent the base, and one represents the base and one represents the height for the back. So 29 times 10 is 290. And we did not divide that by 2 because that is not a triangle. You can tell it's not a triangle because it has 4 sides. Now let's look at this left rectangle right here. The left rectangle. It's got 4 sides too, so we're not going to divide that one by 2, are we? No. What's my base for that one? 21, it looks like. 21 looks like the base. What about the height? There's not a number right here. So what do you think that it would be? Well, I think if the whole 3D shape has a height of 10, then this line would be parallel to this line, which would be parallel to this line, because one side of the shape can't be taller than the other. So if this is 10 and this is 10, this has to be 10. Always look at your parallel lines. 21 times 10 would be 210. And that's for that one. Now the last one we're going to do is the right rectangle. The right rectangle over here. The base is obviously 20. The height is obviously 10. And so 20 times 10 is 200 for that right rectangle. Now what did I say in my rules that you do with all of your numbers? You add them up. If you added all of these correctly, you would have gotten a surface area of 1120. Good job. All right, a couple of extra things that I want to add to it real quick are prisms have 2 bases and pyramids have 1, right? So this is a prism. We know because the net, that's the unfolded version of a 3D shape, the net would look like this. It has 2 triangular bases. So remember, this is not a pyramid right here because it has 2 bases, one right there and one right there. And that means this is a prism. We know it's a triangular prism because the bases are triangles. Now, if those were rectangles or squares, it wouldn't be a triangular prism. It would be a square or rectangular prism. Now, what about pyramids? How many bases do pyramids have? Pyramids, I wrote it down, obviously have 1 base. So let's look at an example of a pyramid. This picture right here would be a square pyramid. We know that it is a square pyramid because the base, the 1 base that it has, is a square. Always look at the base, look at the shape of the base, and then you'll know the name of the 3D shape. If you folded all these up, like pulled that up and pulled that up and pulled that up and pulled it up, and they all met at the top, it would make a perfect pyramid. And this is a square pyramid. All right. Good job. Thank you for listening today. I hope this helped you a little bit.